If you're pouring your heart into your podcast, but still struggling to turn those listeners into paying clients, I've got something just for you. Imagine having a clear, simple plan to turn your listeners into buyers without relying on a huge audience or spending hours on social media. That's exactly what we'll create together in a podcast profit plan discovery call. During this free 20-minute call, I'll help you discover more opportunities for profit in your podcast and give you the next best step to turn your show into a client attracting machine. If I've got an offer that will help you expedite this process, then we can also discuss working together. Book your free podcast profit plan discovery call now by going to podcastingformoms.co/profit plan or by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to chat with you. After helping hundreds of mom entrepreneurs grow their podcasts, I can tell you this with confidence. The reason that your show isn't being discovered isn't your content, it's your foundation. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Sonoson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you, because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm super excited that you're here and I can't wait to jump in. So if you've ever thought, I'm pouring my heart into my podcast, but how are people actually supposed to find it? Then this episode is for you. Because here's the truth. Getting found on podcast apps has way less to do with going viral and way more to do with building a smart, searchable foundation. Today, I'm breaking down how podcast apps actually decide which shows to surface, the biggest mistakes keeping moms invisible, and exactly what to focus on if you want consistent discovery, even if you're only working in the margins. Let's get into it. So first, let's start with how podcast apps really work. And first and foremost, I want to bust a big myth. So podcast apps are not like social media. They're not prioritizing trends, aesthetics, or daily posting. Podcast apps work like search engines. So that means that they care about keywords, clarity, consistency, and listener behavior. When someone opens Apple Podcasts or Spotify and types in something like podcast marketing, mom entrepreneur, start a podcast, the app is scanning your metadata to decide the following, to decide if the show is even relevant for that shirt. This app is scanning your metadata to decide, is the show relevant for that specific search? And if your podcast isn't clearly telling the app who it's for and what it's about, it's not going to get shown. So first, let's talk about your show title. So a clever or cute name, while that is fun, it's not going to be your best bet because clarity always beats clever when it comes to discovery. Instead of something like the Mic Drop Diaries, try something like Podcasting for Moms, grow your show and turn your listeners into leads. And obviously my show is called Podcasting for Moms. So obviously don't take that since that's my title. But can you see the clear difference there? Podcasting for Moms is very clear, and the app knows that the show is about podcasting, it's for moms, and it's about growth and monetization. Next is your podcast description. So this is not the place for a poetic brand story. Your description should clearly answer, who is this podcast for? What problems does it solve? What topics do you consistently cover? And what topics do you consistently cover? Quick pro tip is to write your description the way that your ideal listener would search. So you make sure that you're having those keywords included, but without it being too keyword stuffed, if that makes sense. So now let's talk about episode titles and why they are your discovery power tool. So your episode titles are doing more heavy lifting than you realize. Most podcasters title their episodes based on inside jokes, vibes, and what feels catchy, but searchable titles are going to win every single time. So instead of something like Big Lessons I Learned from Last Year, try something like Podcast Growth Lessons Every Mom Entrepreneur Needs in 2025. Each episode title should include a clear topic, a specific benefit, and language that your audience already uses. If someone can't tell what they're going to get from the episode within 3 seconds, the app isn't going to prioritize it. So now let's talk about some consistency signals. So here's something that most people don't realize. Podcast apps reward consistency, not volume. So you don't need daily episodes, multiple shows, and burnout level output. But what you do need is a predictable schedule, even if that's just once a week or bi-weekly. Consistency tells the app that the show is active, reliable, and worth recommending. And consistency doesn't mean perfection, it means sustainability. Another thing to keep in mind is that listener behavior impacts visibility. And this one's big. Podcast apps pay attention to downloads, follows, reviews, and episode completion or consumption. This is why your calls to action matter. Instead of saying, I hope you enjoy the episode, I'll see you next week, try something like, if this episode helped you, tap follow so you don't miss next week's episode. You're training your listeners how to support your show and helping the app trust you even more. So now I want to talk about the biggest mistake that moms make with podcast discovery. And this is a mistake that I see all the time. And that is that moms are trying to grow their podcast by doing everything except optimizing the podcast itself. More Instagram posts are not going to fix unclear titles, weak descriptions, and inconsistent publishing. When your foundation is strong, discovery happens on autopilot. That is how moms grow podcasts in part-time hours, not by hustling harder. So if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, okay, I know my podcast could be doing more than it is right now. That is exactly why I created my podcast growth blueprint. This walks you through how to optimize your show for discovery, how to create content that converts, and how to grow sustainably as a busy mom. You can grab it via the link in the show notes. And if this episode helped you, I would love if you take a minute and leave me a review. This helps more moms find the show and reminds the apps that we're worth recommending. All right, that's it for this episode. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.